Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, and with me, my co-host, straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. How you doing today, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy. How about you?
Pretty good. You know, this topic that we are going to cover today, every year when the Super Bowl occurs, many people claim that the biggest sex trafficking day in the whole year is Super Bowl Sunday. Now, whether that's true or not is left open to some debate. However, all the components are there for this to happen. Large amounts of men in a city, uh, the demand for prostitution, the demand for pimps to lure young women into prostitution for an event like this. It's horrible to associate this with this event, which should be all Americana, the Super Bowl. It's horrible to associate it with sex trafficking. However, it has been, and we're going to look into that. We're going to also look into an incident just happened in New York City. But before we do that, we're going to play the Police Off the Cuff song, and we'll be right back.
It's a show with two retired detectives that were in the thick of New York crime, fast and hectic. They got some stories and some jokes, even an interview with the most popular folks. Off the cuff, off the cuff. One episode just ain't enough. Get a little laughter and an interview too. It's maybe the best thing you can do.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. The topic is human trafficking, sex trafficking. More and more common, the more people come into this country illegally. They're already weakened by their status, and they're being preyed upon by some of these cartels. But here's a real incident of human trafficking right in New York City. And we're going to cover this because the Manhattan DA's office did a full year investigation. And, you know, when they say, if you see something, say something, this is one of those instances. If people would have reported these people, maybe they could have brought this down earlier. We're going to play this on the screen and get your feelings on this. Here we go.
The child services had that address and they knew his history. Both in handcuffs, 38-year-old Kareem Mitchell and his wife, Sharice, 51, went into court.
You were doing this with foster children? Is that correct?
The Manhattan DA's office calls this a sex trafficking takedown that came after a 9-month investigation. In evidence, verbatim texts about prostitution, money records on Zelle, ads for prostitution on Instagram and Facebook, and specifics regarding hotels and cars where sex acts allegedly took place. Involved, 8 victims, all young women, 2 of them in foster care at the couple's apartment here in the Bronx. In court, both Kareem and Sharice Mitchell pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking and conspiracy charges, which, if convicted, carry up to a possible 100 years in prison for him and 75 years for her. Read in court, verbatim texts like "pop you in the face, get in the car" from just this morning, including expletives promising violence. Allegedly, fear and threats were a daily occurrence in messages, all reportedly in evidence. Most disturbing, Kareem Mitchell is a registered sex offender dating back to 2008. He served 5 years. His wife, Sharice, at exactly the same address in the Bronx, was able somehow to foster 2 young women who, according to what happened in court today, literally were recruited from the foster care system for sex trafficking and prostitution. Their ages were not given.
Do you have anything to say?
The charges span areas of New York, but alleged prostitution also took place in Connecticut and New Jersey. Charges again, sex trafficking and conspiracy. If convicted, he could see 100 years. She could see 75. Both were called a flight risk today in court. No bail for the man, Kareem Mitchell. Millions in bail, which she is not expected to post for Sharice Mitchell.
Your reaction, Phil?
Wow. All I could say is wow. Before I really give the reaction to that part of what we're going to talk about, I had brought out earlier that the new DA in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, was talking about not charging prostitution cases or not enforcing prostitution arrests. Now, again, you have a situation here. What we're talking about is these are foster parents that had children that are being taken out of their home for different reasons, whether it be domestic violence in the home, narcotic use, drugs, whatever, drug addicted parents or mothers or fathers or whatever it is. So these kids are already at a risk and they're vulnerable. So now you have foster parents, and he's a registered sex offender living in a home with foster children. So those two things don't jive together. They're oil and water. They don't mix. It's just unbelievable that you could have such a situation going on in New York City. That one hand, the foster care system doesn't know that the sex offender registry that they're not meeting in the middle and finding out if such a thing is taking place. It's just unbelievable. I feel terrible for these young kids. They're obviously vulnerable. Like I said, they're being threatened with violence and God knows what else. So they're at a great disadvantage. This is true sex trafficking. This is true sex trafficking. Now, again, that's why I called on a district attorney in New York City to interdict and arrest prostitution arrest, because you may have a kid that gets picked up in one of these sweeps and they may tell the truth about what's going on, and then you can start this investigation. And I would venture to say that maybe how this investigation started to begin with. So we cannot do the things that this insane district attorney in New York, Alvin Brand, is talking about doing. We need to enforce the laws, and then from these arrests, we'll be able to interdict these young kids and find out what's going on and offer them some type of counseling and help. And, the main subject we're on today about the Super Bowl being a hub for sex trafficking, I was completely taken aback by this because I had no idea that this type of stuff goes on. However, when I did a little bit of research, you can understand it's a week-long party now. And again, prostitution, it revolves around these type of events, and you can understand how there could be a grave risk of sex trafficking at the Super Bowl.
Phil, I just want to get back to that New York case because it just seems like incompetence at the highest level.
Absolutely.
Because, first of all, foster children, there's supposed to be an investigation into the background of the people that are adopting them. And clearly this woman was being a foster mother, not just for profit, but in order to force these girls into prostitution. However, they're getting paid to take care of these kids. So I've doubted the motives of a lot of foster children in my career in the NYPD when we did homicide investigations and seeing people that were registered foster parents. And I was like, how the hell do they let you be a foster parent? It was just baffling to me. The other thing is, shouldn't the sex offender registry somehow be connected to the foster care registry? So if they run an address and it says, no, a sex offender lives here, guess what? You can't have a foster child in the same location as a sex. I mean, it's baffling to me. There's no database that would just blow up and pop up and say, no, a sex offender lives here, same address that this woman's trying to be a foster mother at.
Well, in my opinion, ACS, which handles foster children in the New York City area, Administration for Children's Services, how they don't have a connection to a sex offender registry, all you'd have to do, you don't even need the help of the police department. You can just go online and find out who's on the registry. And then, like you said, you cross-reference. And if there's a person living at that address, then you have to put on the brakes and say, wait, hold on a second. We can't have this foster child placed in this location if this actual person that's registered there is in the same dwelling. Unbelievable how something like that could take place.
It seems like that should be investigation 101. And
Absolutely.
if you don't know how to do investigation 101, who's protecting these kids in these foster care program? I mean, outrageous. We were just talking about Don Wells the other day, and because he was arrested for and remanded for a DWI. And so many people in our chat, I don't know if you noticed, come to his defense. And I'm just like, I hope they never get their kids back, because both of them are unfit parents. You know, she appears to be a drug addict. He's an alcoholic. He's been in prison numerous times. I mean, I hope their kids go to a good foster family.
A healthy environment. You want them in a
Yes,
healthy environment.
because they have no hope with those two, Don and Candace Wells. And I'm sorry if some of you folks that listen to us disagree with that, but I think they're a mess, both of them. They're both alcohol and or drug addicts and or both, you know, so I don't think they belong having kids. They should not be raising kids.
I have to agree with you, Billy. And unless there is a drastic change, now there should be a very intensive investigation by the Children's Administration Service, whatever it is in that area, that before those kids are placed back into that home, that there is a tremendous change. Those kids need to be in a healthy environment. Everything we saw and everything we talked about, we know, and we called for it right in the beginning, that the other children should be investigated to possibly be removed from the home, because we saw what we saw right on the video camera, right on YouTube, on different podcasts and stuff. So we knew that there was an environment there that was not healthy. Those kids should only be placed back if there's some major changes by Candace and Don. And I'm talking about something that might take place in years from now. That's not going to be a couple of weeks and then back in the home. No way. They need intensive help, and there has to be a drastic change before those kids should go back. And I'm speaking on behalf of being a parent and on behalf of the children. That's not an environment for children to grow up in. Absolutely.
This is a girl in California who was basically like kidnapped off the street and forced into prostitution. I just want to play a little bit of this for our viewers to take a look how this could be possible. It could happen to anyone.
In the car, I knew something was off.
Simone Miller was only 16 when she was kidnapped and trafficked by a man she had just met.
He was just like, I'm a pimp and you're my hoe, and I'm going to take you somewhere. You're going to be given instructions on what to do, and running is not an option.
She was taken to a hotel where other women were being held. Simone says the man who told her he was a rapper when she first met him warned her if she tried to escape, he would kill her mother and her grandmother.
If anybody knows me, like, that's like my weakness, you know, because like my family is all I have.
As days went by, Simone was desperate to get out of this situation.
What can I do? What can I do? And I started playing along. And I had him thinking, like, I'm okay with it. You know, I put on this red lingerie.
The pimp let his guard down, and when he took a shower and left his cell phone on the bed, Simone made a quick phone call to her mother.
And I said, Mom. And she said, baby, where are you? And I said, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at, Mom. She just said, tell me what you see, Simone. I said, I'm like looking out the window of this hotel. I said, I see like a 7-Eleven. She's like, okay, what else do you see? I said, like I don't know, a Church's chicken. She's like, okay.
Somehow, with that brief description, her entire family hit different locations, searching for Simone until they found her outside of a 7-Eleven. Her captor was inside buying cigarettes, unaware his victim was about to be rescued.
All I could think was, when this man gets out of this 7-Eleven, it's going to be trouble.
Despite everything he put her through, Simone protected him, telling her family he wasn't the man who kidnapped her.
I still know that it wasn't right what he did, but I got in the car with him. You know what I mean? And I just didn't want them to kill him in front of me. And I kept saying, no, that's not him. That's not him.
It's been many years since that horrific experience. Simone is now a crisis interventionist at Teen Project, a nonprofit that helps survivors of human trafficking.
It's healing. Subconsciously, I'm healing by helping.
Such a strong young woman. Now, you may be wondering what happened to the man who took Simone. Well, her family let him go the night that she was rescued. He was later killed in an unrelated incident.
Wow, that's karma. He was later killed in an unrelated incident. You know, If you could see, if you guys know anything about law enforcement, that's almost like what's called Stockholm syndrome. And she identified with her captor, and she didn't want him punished. It's
Billy, she was also in fear because he did say to her that he would kill her family too. So, she's a young kid and who knows what was going through her mind. But you're right about the Stockholm syndrome. You get to be almost on the same page as the person that's holding you captive, and you start to feel empathy for them. And obviously it's I guess it's human nature, but terrible, terrible situation with these young kids. It's just unbelievable.
Phil, I remember when back in the 80s or early 90s, the Port Authority in New York City was notorious for that because there were pimps all over the place. And they would see young girls coming into New York City, and they would read the fear on their face and the insecurity on it, and they would grab these girls and they would force them into prostitution. And I don't know if you remember back in the 80s, the west side of Manhattan was like a prostitution, hundreds. I'm talking hundreds of girls out on the street any night. And it was just almost like the way the city and the police department dealt with it is they made arrests, which really were just a total revolving door, because I think loitering for prostitution is just an A misdemeanor. And the girl would just get out the next day. And that was it. And C.R. Patrick, Generation X, thank you for the $5 super chat. And she's a fan of Phil Grimaldi. She says, Phil G for mayor, thank you for this live.
Thank you so much.
I don't know if Phil's going to run for mayor anytime soon. Maybe
she could be starting my exploratory committee.
Yeah, but so, it's a huge problem, and it's starting to come back. And I think part of the problem is this whole thing we spoke about with other crimes, the problem with decarceration and the willingness not to prosecute for certain crimes. And as you can see, the big victims, and the other side always tries to say, oh, it's just sex. No, it's not. Look at the victims of this. The victims of these young girls. And it's not just sex. If you're talking about whatever your feelings are on prostitution, and you're talking about like Las Vegas, where it's legal and it's regulated and all, that's a whole different thing. But when it's part of the criminal element, there's a lot of, kidnapping, and there's people held against their will. And there's brutal pimps that run this type of business, and it's a horrendous thing.
Billy, you brought up the Port Authority from the 80s and 90s. Pimps were preying on runaways. That's what that was all about. They'd be hawking runaways. Kids run away, and they come to the big city, and whatever the situation is, whether they have issues at home with their parents, abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, drug abuse. That's what they were doing. They were preying on these kids. So now in 2022 or 2021, 2022, they use social media to prey on these kids. So they engage them in conversation in different chat rooms, and they offer them, get away from your parents and whatever it is that's going on in your home. Come and meet me. And next thing you know, they're forcing these kids into prostitution. It's just unbelievable situation. And from the little bit of research that I did, I was really taken aback by it.
Christine Connell, thank you so much for this comment, and you're very brave to volunteer it.
Absolutely.
I lived on the streets of Seattle early 80s. The predators were everywhere. Help was hard to find. A few good cops helped save my life. Was drugged and woke with gun in my face. God got me out of there. Well, thank God you got saved.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure your life is hell of a lot better now that you got out of that bad situation, a horrendous situation.
Billy, she made such a point there, though, that there wasn't a lot of services. I think there are social services that can interdict these kids today. I mean, listen, it's going to be hard to find them behind closed doors with all the social media stuff. But if there is an arrest situation, they can be interviewed during the arrest process and say, what's going on with your life? How did you wind up here? And that's what these social programs do. I mean, that's what we should be focusing on. Let's stop defunding the police and let's fund programs like that. I mean, we talked about funding, the after school programs with the kids, with the boxing and all, to keep them out of gangs. How about for these poor kids that are in these horrible situations in foster homes, and they wind up, God forbid, being prostitutes, and they get arrested? Let's have a program that interdicts them and offers them help and safety and services to get their lives back on track. That young lady that just posted that comment, she's a success story of what happened in her life, and she made it out. Thank God.
100%. And I'm going to play a little bit of this. This is getting back to the Super Bowl. So as you could see, there's another person that she's giving back now. She survived human trafficking, sex trafficking, and there is a way out. I mean, but, when you think about how manipulative these pimps are and how violent these pimps are, and it's like they ran the Upper West Side, Hell's Kitchen area. That's below 59th Street, above 44th Street. And Lieutenant Pranzo is in the chat, and he was in street crime back then. He can attest to that. There was so many girls out on that street, and these pimps patrolled like they were a radio car, watching their girls, watching their dollars. And there were rival pimps that would get in fights, and sometimes they get in gunfights on the street. And then some people in the chat also said that a lot of the times the prostitutes would rob the Johns, and that was all part of it too. Like if a guy rode through they would call it the track. There's a whole language to prostitution. Someone would ride through the track in a taxi, and the prostitutes would reach in and like relieve the person of a Rolex watch or a chain or something like that. And it happened all the time,
Billy, think about what that young lady said that said she was in sex trafficking, and now she's trying to be an advocate to prevent it. If somebody didn't reach out to me, I wouldn't be alive today. So when did that reach out take place? Was it during an arrest? You know what I mean? Very, very important that we have services in place to interdict these kids and find out if they need help and pull them out of this horrible situation they're in. Now, with regard to the Super Bowl, I'm just really taken back by it. The fact that this is the most watched sporting event in America, and it's notoriously susceptible to sex trafficking. I had no idea, Billy. When I started to think about it, okay, it's a week-long party. There's probably a lot of different people partying and drinking, and yeah, prostitution falls in line with that. But I didn't know that sex trafficking would be such a big topic for the Super Bowl. And, I also found when I was doing a little bit of research that the local government in Los Angeles is putting up signs in LAX saying if you need help with telephone numbers. And they actually posted signs. They have illuminated signs throughout the airport, and they have 460 bathrooms that also have signs in them to say, if you're involved in sex trafficking or prostitution and you need help, here's a phone number. They also actually sent information to different hotels in the area. So it sounds like the local politicians are trying to get out in front of this horrible situation. But I wonder, where is NFL in the middle of all of this? I don't see I haven't found anything related to the NFL. The NFL is making millions and billions of dollars off of this football game, the Super Bowl, between advertisers and the rest. But what are they doing to try and put a stop to this horrible sex trafficking? That's the question that I have.
I would like to, and I just want to add for the other side, there are people, specifically journalists, that dispute that this is in fact the largest human trafficking day of the year. So editorialists, but then they're obviously putting a lot of effort with social service workers getting out there to spot it. They also try to make aware the Uber drivers that are potentially driving young girls that appear to be terrified, appear to be with maybe someone who's older than that they don't look like they should be with, for them to report it also. So gets back to that old New York City thing, which became the mantra after 9/11: if you see something, say something.
Yep.
And that's what's going on in these areas. And I mean, you're 100% right. I think the NFL takes a lot, and they decide what they're going to get involved with in regards to what Black Lives Matter. Obviously, they were heavily invested in that. How about this? How about human trafficking? How about prostitution? How about, slavery, people that are being enslaved into working a job? Because this is right near the Mexican border. It's in California. So potentially they could see some of this at the Super Bowl, and they want to train people how to spot this and how to do something about it, how to notify the police, how to notify the authorities, write down a license plate number, write down a description, if a girl looks like she's in crisis, talk to her, ask her, you know.
You know, Billy, when I was doing the research, I was seeing those stories that you just remarked to, that some of the journalists are saying, well, is it really the biggest sex trafficking event? Whether it is or it isn't, if there's one person that's being trafficked or forced into prostitution at that game, that's one person too many. So I think that they're trying to shine a light on it. They're saying it's the largest event largest sporting event that's watched in America. It's notoriously susceptible to sex trafficking because of the amount of people that that descend on the Super Bowl area. And like I said, it's a week-long party, so it makes sense that it could be one of the largest draws of prostitution and sex trafficking, and these these minors that are forced into it. So I mean, whether or not we're going to decide is it the biggest or not, like I said, if it's one person, it's one person too many. How about shining some light on it, putting some focus from the NFL? It sounds like what little research I did. I mean, it seems like the local politicians have their hand in the game to try and, to help. But you brought up some good points. I mean, if an Uber driver gets a second where he could say to a young lady, are you okay? Is everything okay with this person you're with? Even while that person turns their head for a second, that might be something. Maybe they can give them business cards to hand to people that they think could be, being forced into some sex worker stuff, So
this video here was last year from Florida, and you could see they targeted the Johns, and we're going to see what some of the results they had.
And a secure experience for everyone visiting Tampa. We were also working behind the scenes to zero in on human trafficking and those who sexually exploit others. The sickening practice of human trafficking is a crime that is nothing less than modern-day slavery. Escaping the wrath of a trafficker takes courage and in some cases is nearly impossible. For this reason, we have not and will not relent in our efforts to stop the demand. And we are accomplishing this one arrest at a time, one rescue at a time. When the National Football League announced nearly 2 years ago that Tampa was awarded Super Bowl 55, we knew then that for some, our beautiful Tampa will become a hotspot for human trafficking. Our undercover detectives focus on hotels and motels, online chat rooms, adult entertainment establishments, massage parlors, and street-level solicitations, which resulted in a record number of arrests. Over the past 2 weeks, the 75 individuals whose photos are on display were apprehended while trying to buy or sell sex. The youngest, just 19 years old, and most senior, 73 years old, all of whom were taking part in this deplorable criminal practice that destroys lives and keeps human traffickers in business. In one case, through skillful and diligent detective work, we identified 3 men believed to be trafficking women in our area. Undercover detectives engaged with one of the trafficking victims through an online advertisement. She arrived at the hotel accompanied by Alvin Lynch Jr., a 20-time convicted felon, and his associate, Scott Fitzgerald. After their arrest, the victim told detectives about additional women the men were also trafficking. While I cannot provide too many details due to the ongoing nature of this investigation, I can tell you that we identified and made contact with 2 more victims, one of whom is only 17 years old. Involved in another case is Juan Cano Jr., who now faces a human trafficking charge after traveling to meet a girl he thought was 17 years of age. Cano engaged in an online conversation with one of our undercover detectives who assumed the identity of a human trafficker. Juan Cano struck a deal with the trafficker, our detective, offering to pay to have sex with whom he believed was a teenage human trafficking victim for $150. While Operation Game Over resulted in a record number of arrests, we were also able to identify and rescue 5 adult females who we connected with one of our local partners, Selah Freedom, to receive counseling and support services. And the 17-year-old female we rescued was receiving help to the Department of Children and Family. To be effective in our fight against human trafficking, we will continue to pursue every lead and every space where human traffickers operate. We will remain vigilant to identify victims and get them the help and support they need to break this vicious cycle, while continuing to educate the public on the signs of human trafficking and what to do if they believe someone may be a victim.
So even though this journalist says it's a myth, it's obviously not a myth. That was last year, I believe, in Tampa, or 2 years ago, and they targeted all these sex offenders, these people that were buying and selling sex, and I think he said they made over 75 arrests. Another thing he mentioned, and it's very common, a lot of this crime in this day and age has moved to the internet. So especially online predators that are looking to meet young children. And Westchester County, and I believe Nassau County has it too, and I would imagine Manhattan must also have it. They have these online stings where detectives will pretend they're 14 or 15 years old, and they'll lure some online predator in, and they have like a 95% conviction rate. And most of the time, the offender takes a plea, because if they take it to trial, they will do 5 years in prison. That's like, if a first time luring a child for a sex offense, they can do 5 years. So most of them will plead guilty and they get 5 years probation, but they have to register as a sex offender and they have a felony conviction.
Billy, I want to go back to the story that we started with. Now, let's just say, for argument's sake, that foster home, and I don't even want to call it a foster home. It was a recruitment center for prostitution or sex trafficking. But let's say they weren't arrested. There's a chance that the man of that situation, the husband, he could have taken a couple of the girls and went down to California and traffic them, put them in a bar or a restaurant and engage with people who are partying and say, hey, you want to have sex with these young girls? That very well could have happened. Now, they were obviously arrested beforehand. We don't know what their plans were, but obviously this is not something that is taking place only in one situation. There's situations like this across the country. And again, to generate business, they're going to take these young girls and they're going to force them into the areas where there's going to be parties and all of these different things going on in different bars and restaurants. And that's how they're going to engage to find prospective Johns to engage in sexual activity with these young girls. And I got to tell you, I said it twice already. I'm going to say it for a third time. I was so taken back by this. It never registered in my head that this would be, you think of the Super Bowl. It's a great day when you get together with family and you watch the game on TV and the commercials and all of that. And usually it's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And then you find that there's this dark side of it. And I think that we really need to shine a light on it, to focus on it. And the NFL's got to step up, and they're throwing money towards Black Lives Matter and racism and all of these things that really I don't agree with none of it. I mean, there is some racism in the country, obviously, but they make it sound like it's rampant, and I don't believe it to be. But how about getting behind these poor young kids that are being forced into the sex trade by vicious animalistic pimps?
Femi Fatal, thank you for your comment. They recruit women in jail as well. Happened to a high school friend of mine while she was using heroin. They recruit people that are weak. Sometimes they'll get them addicted to drugs so that they're less resistant to leaving, and that's all part of that whole Stockholm syndrome thing. They'll get them addicted to drugs, and they won't be able to find the strength in themselves to get out of a horrendous situation. And these pimps are all, if you ever saw some of these pimps, they're the worst type of human being on this earth, The other thing that we're not going to ignore, and I'm sure anyone that lives in a town, a suburb in the United States, probably they're all over the world, are these massage parlors. And those are prime also for human trafficking. Young Asian women that are forced over here. They're told that they're going to get a job in a restaurant. Next thing they know, they're working in the sex trade. And that's what it is. And they're forced into it. And there's hundreds of these locations. And again, because there's no teeth in the law, they're almost impossible to shut down these locations. The police will do a raid. They'll make arrest. 2 days later, a different a different group of people have the same location up and running, with a different name.
Absolutely, Billy. It's a difficult process to really put these people out of business because, like you said, they'll open under a different name. They'll go to a different location. And usually, like with the massage places, we had occasion when I worked in Bay Ridge before I retired, a few years before I retired, to come across some of these. They call them massage parlors, but they're not massages. They're sex trade operations. One or two people involved in the location has a license to give a massage, and the rest of the people are just they're playing out their hookers. There's no other way to explain it. And probably some of them, the ones that we had weren't Asian. They were Russian. They were from different areas of that area of the country. And, they're new to the country. They don't have a lot of family here. They're forced into it, obviously. And, some people look at it as a victimless crime. No, it's not victimless. These are true victims. If you're forced to do something against your will, and again, these pimps that we were talking about earlier, what they'll do is they'll take advantage of a person that's in turmoil. So what's your problem? Oh, I have no place to live. Well, come and live. I'll give you this nice place to live. You could stay with me. You'll be my girlfriend. That's how it starts out. They paint the rosy picture. They get them into their grips. They get them into their confidence. And then they say, well, you can't live for free. How am I going to take care of you? You got to go out on the street for me. And next thing you know, they're being prostituted by these animals.
For sure. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I see a lot of our friends with the green font, our channel members. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're not subscribed to us, please go on our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. We also have a Patreon that helps support us with 3 different levels. And as I alluded to before, the YouTube channel members in the green font, we have 5 different levels. If you could support us, become a member of the YouTube family. We give extra content. In fact, Phil and I are supposed to do an additional Coppers in the Kitchen episode
Coming
in the
up
next couple of weeks. Teach you guys some really good recipes from both from Italy and from the poor Irish family I came from. I mean, I'm going to teach you guys how to make poor man's pizza in one of the next Coppers in the Kitchen episodes. Anyway, let's get back to this really heartbreaking topic. It's just, it's just a horrendous subject. And, when something like the Super Bowl that just really generates billions, not millions of dollars, if you take into consideration the amount of money that is bet on the Super Bowl, it goes into the billions, I would say that almost everyone that's listening to this, C.R. Patrick, you really want Phil for mayor that badly. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, but I don't know if Phil's running anytime soon, but thank you.
Maybe in another
thank you
lifetime.
for that,
Thank you so much. Great.
Every single person I'm sure has in their office or in the school they work at or wherever they work, these pools, these boxes. Everyone, I mean, it's a harmless little thing. Sana Elise Hoth Johnson, thank you so much for the $19 super sticker. I really appreciate that. And I hope I said your name correctly. It's a little Sana Elise Hoth Johnson. That's great. Super sticker. I love that. Is that a Rottweiler you got there in that picture? I don't want to sneak into your backyard.
Is she from across the pond, you think, Bill?
I think the Netherlands. I think.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sana.
Yeah, it's great that we have all these subscribers and listeners from across the world. It's just a great feeling. Thank you so much.
Oh, it sure is. And Ryan Cantrell, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. A lot of you guys, sometimes I haven't seen a lot of you for a while, and then you all come back. It's great to see you coming back. Phil and I try to be as eclectic as possible and get some of the best guests. I don't know if you guys watched the other night. We thought it was one of the best shows we've done in a long time. We had 2 police commissioners on our show. One is a former police commissioner of Yonkers, which is a small town in Westchester, not so small, very busy, a lot of crime in Yonkers. And the other was the current police commissioner of Nassau County, which is a huge county on Long Island. And these guys were so great. I mean, great guests. And someone sent me a little message and said, you guys get the greatest guests. I said, yeah, we try, And it's not always, you're not always guaranteed, even when you have these fantastic guests, to draw in the audience. And that's what always baffles me about YouTube. I'm going to try to get Bill Bratton too in the next couple of months, because
That would
New
be
York
nice.
City's got a huge problem with crime, and who better to talk to than Bill Bratton? So I'm going to see if I can try to get. And he just put out a new book, so he's going to want to hawk his book. So hopefully he'll be willing to come on our show.
You know, Billy, I thought the show the other night with the two commissioners was great. They brought up some great points, but I kind of felt vindicated because we've been given our opinion. You and I feel we're right in the same, we're in sync with what our opinion is how to reduce crime, not only in New York, but throughout the country. And getting it from upper management to police commissioners, they were right in lockstep with what we've been saying. So I really felt good about that. That was a great show. And real quick today, we weren't scheduled to do a show. You got a hold of me earlier. We talked about possibly doing it earlier in the week, and then we pulled the pin on it and we decided to do it. I mean, I think it's something that really needs a focus on. So I'm glad we came on today. And
Phil, to tell you the truth, you suggested this to me a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I don't know. And we've actually had some people reach out to us, experts in the field, that wanted to come on the show, but I can't always plan things that far ahead of time where I can say, oh, can you come on? I actually asked a woman today to come on the show who was a police expert, and it was her birthday, and she couldn't come on, and she's been on the show before. I'll find her name now. Why can't I think of her name right now? And so I called her a couple of hours before the show, and she said, "Oh, it's my birthday. I'm flying to Las Vegas." I said, "Happy birthday!" And I said, "It must feel great to be 21." And obviously, she's a hell of a lot older than 21, but she was flattered and she was looking forward to her birthday. And so we try to get folks, but sometimes you can't always plan so far in advance. Sometimes I like to do things by the seat of my pants. Ryan Cantrell, your show is great. Love hearing the East Coast perspective. We're all doing the same fight. 11 months to retirement. Good for you,
Good
Ryan.
for you, Ryan.
And thank you for your service. God bless all members of the service. Everyone wants to make it to the end, to when they get a pension or when they've had enough of doing the very stressful work that law enforcement is.
And Bill and I are proof that there is life after the job, Ryan.
That's right.
God bless you. I hope your 11 months goes quick, and enjoy your life after the job.
Ryan, when I first retired, I taught college for 5 years, and I had taught college for 10 and a half years, but I didn't even miss a beat. I went right from retiring and to a full-time teaching job. I had been teaching part-time. And then I did that for 5 years, and then I got sort of a little sick of teaching, and I left, and I started doing acting and stand-up comedy, and then I fell into the podcast, myself and Mark DeMeo. And the podcast is now 3 years old, and I dropped everything to just do the podcast. I'm not acting anymore, and I'm not doing stand-up comedy. I'm doing just the podcast, and it's a struggle, but it's very satisfying. And along the way, I met Phil on a TV show, and then Phil wound up being my co-host. So things work out.
I'm very thankful that you dropped everything to continue doing this, because to me, it keeps me focused. It keeps me in the game, so to speak, with law enforcement. And a lot of times we'll have a show that any topic is open for discussion on Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories, because, like this is kind of in the law enforcement category, but I think it's more of a human interest kind of story. And we're ready to take on whatever the current hot topic is of the day. And unfortunately, a lot of times it is law enforcement related, but I think that we give a good perspective, and we'll give honest opinions, and we're not going to report stuff that we don't know for fact. We're trying to stay in that, integrity lane. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. The viewers and the subscribers seem to agree. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and hopefully it'll just get better and better, and our audience will get bigger and bigger.
Let me add this here for a second.
Area, thousands of people coming to one spot, and so there is more demand. Action 169 actually was birthed out of a lot of prayer, and I had been out of the industry, out of the strip club industry, for about 4 or 5 years, and I continued to have dreams. And in the dreams, I was back in the strip club dressing room, getting ready to go out on stage, some of the dreams about to do couch dance or bed dance. And the dreams would end up just being very fearful, horrific, and I would wake up crying. And fast forward in my relationship with the Lord, he showed me Acts 16:9. That's how we got the name. Action 169 is to take action, that it's time to do something. And I've felt the call in my heart, knew somehow that, and it took several years, but knew somehow that I was going to go back for a different reason.
We've actually been present doing things at several Super Bowls, and actually every major sporting event, so not only the Super Bowl, but the World Cup and the Olympics. We've done major nationwide initiatives.
When we found out that the Super Bowl was going to be in Minnesota, it was just a moment like, okay, we need to do something. We absolutely need to do something. And since we're already doing consistent strip club outreach, let's host Justice Awakening. And praying into Justice Awakening, the Lord gave us Isaiah 52, which is actually the 52nd Super Bowl. So we were preparing for this and knowing Super Bowl is coming to Minnesota. I was praying and just asked the Lord, who's supposed to be here? And he's Annie Lovere.
This is the good part, is people like you showing up. I'm so honored. And I'm sitting in that seat, Danielle. I was like, why isn't this church full and overflowing? Where are the people? So we're calling everybody out. And it's happening, and praise God, this fire will not die. We're going to make it bigger.
So these were women that formerly worked in the sex industry. You heard that beautiful woman, actually, she was formerly a stripper, and she got out of that business. And that business also can be really nasty, and organized crime involved in it, and just not meeting such good people and the people that you work with, and potentially yourself. You could get involved in drugs and alcohol and that type of thing. And this woman was able to get out of that. And now they're like volunteering and trying to help other people to get out of that life.
You have to applaud those women. They're very strong to have been on the inside of this situation with sex trafficking, whether it be strip clubs or outright prostitution. They're strong women. God bless them. And I kind of feel a little bit stupid about this, Billy, that it never really dawned on me that these large sporting events would have a drawer of sex workers. And it kind of makes sense. It's really not, it's like 2 and 2 adds up to 4, but it just never dawned on me. And I'm just so glad that we came across this topic and that we're doing this story. And, I just hope and pray that there could be a little bit more of a spotlight on it at these big, these large sporting events like the Super Bowl, and we could shine a light on it and maybe put a stop to some of it and save some of these kids. And look at that young lady that, she found God, so to speak. And she looks like she's doing a hell of a job trying to, help others that are maybe sucked into this life of prostitution.
Philly, I just wanted you to give a quick shout out to this gentleman here, who is one of our biggest supporters.
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Great guy, Joe Murray. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of the fence. His website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you could email Joe at joe@jmurray-law.com.
It's funny, the other night when we had Eddie Hartnett on, Eddie Hartnett knew, he knew the detective. If you guys don't know this story, it's Joe Murray told this story on our show. He got into a fist fight with a detective on duty in uniform in a detective squad. And the story goes, the guy poked him and said he hit the guy with like a left hand and broke his jaw. And he wound up getting arrested in uniform. And that incident set in motion a whole different sort of path in his life, which included him vesting out of the police department. He didn't even have an undergraduate degree, going to college, getting his undergraduate degree, and going straight
Law
into law school and
Yeah.
becoming a lawyer.
Yeah.
Had that incident, so you know how sometimes something good can come out of something really bad? Well, that's the good thing that happened in Joe Murray's life that came out of something that was not so good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he
it's
became an attorney.
it's kind of it's a story exactly what you said, where a bad situation, they pulled something good out of it. And Joe has been on the show many times, and you could see that he's a tenacious lawyer, and he fights for the rights of his clients. And he's drawn so many questions to us during several of the cases that we've highlighted and had him on with.
He's
And
he's actually in the chat. He snuck right into the
oh,
chat.
look at that.
Can you believe that? I can't
That's
believe he
perfect.
just showed
That's
up.
perfect. That is perfect. But listen, the point I was trying to make, he fights for the victims, advocates, and he fights for his clients. And you know, you can see that he knows the law, and he's a constitutionalist. What better than that?
Here he is. Love you guys. Joe Murray will fight for you inside and out of the courtroom.
Absolutely.
And Joe, we were just saying the other night, Edmund Hartnett was praising you, and he knew the whole story. So we weren't going to tell the whole story again, but we had a little chuckle over it with the two police commissioners. I thought it was great. So
I'm
the
glad
topic,
he's back, because a lot of people have been asking, "Where's Joe Murray? Where's Joe Murray?" Like friends of mine that watch the show religiously, my brother and stuff. My brother.
well, you know, Phil, till Joe ordered that electronic money counting machine, his Saturdays and Sundays, he would spend all day counting $100 bills,
Oh my
stacking
God.
them like 10 feet high.
He don't have to do that. He can call me. I'll help him count.
That's right. He can get paid in Bitcoin now, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy.
But anyway, folks, this topic is a very important topic. Obviously, it gets to what should be prosecuted and what should not be prosecuted. And many people, you hear people say, "Oh, prostitution is a victimless crime," and
Bullshit.
it's not. It's not a victimless crime, you know. And if you want to talk about a place like Las Vegas where it's legal and it's regulated by the government, it's a whole different thing. And that's also a ethical thing, whether you think that's right or not. But when it's illegal and it's being run by the criminals, then there are some huge victims. There are some big victims to this. And that's where we get into human trafficking.
You know, Billy, victimless? No, I doubt that. When you look at these young kids that were living in, like I said, it wasn't really a foster home. It was more of a recruitment center, and they were forced into prostitution. That's victims, true and true. I mean, there's no question about that. And that's just one story that we highlighted from the New York area. You know, unfortunately, there are people that will, you know, patronize and you know, and pay these pimps for having sex with these young girls, and that alone in and of itself is pretty sick. And I think that the enforcement on the Johns, as well as the pimps and the, you know, the prostitutes, I'm all for that, because if you you know, if you can do enforcement on the people that are paying for the service, might make them think twice about it. I mean, especially, God, with a kid, I don't think there's anything worse in life that you could do than abuse a child. So it's just terrible. And I'm glad that that we're doing this show today and maybe shine a little bit of light on it. And you know, one of the things that one of the young ladies that we had in the last video said, you know, reach out if you see something that doesn't seem right. If you see someone that could be maybe violent towards a young girl, and ask them, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" That might be a big help in a situation where someone's being forced into this type of behavior.
Yeah, 100%. So, you know, guys, I'm going away for a few days, so I don't want to give away where I'm going, but I may do a few shows from a remote location. You may even see a few palm trees in the background. So Phil and I will I'll do a few remote shows, and maybe I'll even take a walk along the beach if it's nice out, and I'll share the images with you guys. But I'm getting tired of the cold weather, you know, and it actually warmed up a little bit in New York, but then I'm hearing it's getting freezing cold again.
Yeah, we're supposed to have a little bit of snow on Sunday. It's supposed to be real warm on Saturday, and then it's going to get cold on Sunday. We're supposed to have a little bit of snow or something, but we'll see. Listen, we're ready for our Super Bowl party. We want to enjoy ourselves, and we'll all keep these kids in our prayers, and let's hope that nothing bad happens or befalls any youths in the situation, whether in foster homes or whatever it is. So just keep a good thought for those kids.
Guys, when on the 29th was my son Jake's birthday, and it snowed in the afternoon, and it was like 10 or 15 degrees here in New York. And my wife was like, "Oh, would you drive into the city?" And I'm like, I really didn't want to drive because the roads were pretty nasty, but how do I turn down my wife when she wants to go take my son and my mother-in-law, my mother-in-law too, my son and my mother-in-law and his girlfriend out to dinner for his 27th birthday? So I braved the weather. I drove in. The roads were nasty. But the worst part of it was, you guys know, if you don't know, they put salt on the road and it winds up on your windshield. And my windshield washer fluid line froze. So I could not see out my damn windows.
That's
and I was
dangerous.
like, this is dangerous as hell. And my wife's like, well, pull over. I go, I can't pull over because, like, you know how there's not clear exits when there's snow and slush all over the place?
The snow is on the shoulder where you would pull over.
Exactly. So I was like, I braved it. I'm looking at the lights in front of me. And finally we got to some light. This was on the way home. And I was like, it was so dangerous. And I said to my wife, go out and pour that bottle of water on the windshield. And she did. And then I was able to see the rest of the way home. What an adventure, right? What an adventure.
Yeah. Welcome to the Northeast in the winter.
Yeah. So, and then I said later on, I go, why did I make my wife do that? I should have got out of the car.
Watch it now, Belly.
Yeah. I felt like I wasn't driving, and all she had to do was pour the water on the windshield so I could see. But
well, you had to be able to see if it was enough to clear the window too.
That's right. That's right. And I paid the check for dinner, so I felt like that's
good man. Good man.
That's the least you could do. We went all the way down to the village, Elizabeth Street. I went across Canal Street and then onto Elizabeth Street, and it was about 8 to 10 inches of snow. So it was no picnic. Phil, this was a great show for an unexpected little show here. We got to see our friends, Lieutenant Pete in the chat. Joe Murray showed up. All our channel members, Melissa Cicino. Tomorrow's Hit the Beach Day, but I have really light white Irish skin. I got to be careful, I got to put that on that. What are they? That 40 sunblock?
50, something 40 like that.
50. Look at someone just said, poor lady. Who was that? Real with Rumble. Poor lady had to do all the heavy lifting for Cannon. I take care of my wife, believe me. Jimmy Calandra's even is in the chat. I'm giving a shout out to Brooklyn Borough Commander, Second Chief Michael Kemper, great guy.
Oh, I think, yeah, he supposedly was contacted by Kemper and wants to talk to him about maybe doing some youth services. That's a real nice thing. And we're supposed to be doing Jimmy's show. I got to get a hold of him that we could collaborate together. And
yeah, well, we're always looking to collaborate and to go on the shows of other great podcasters, So
absolutely.
So Phil,
not
final
an easy
words.
Game. It's a tough game, this podcasting business. People think it's easy, but it's not.
That's right. Phil, final words.
Final words. I want everybody to stay safe over this Super Bowl weekend coming up. Enjoy yourself. Have a good time. Don't drink too much. You could eat a little extra. You'll walk it off next week or something. And just keep these kids in your prayers, and anybody that's being forced into sexual trade, sex trafficking, people that are doing stuff against their will. Just keep a good thought for them and say a prayer. If you don't believe in God, just a good thought. And Billy, enjoy your days. I know you've been working, you've been grinding. You're going to have a few days off. If you want to do a show, get a hold of me. We'll be right in it.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to do a few shows from down there. Definitely.
Good,
and Saturday, Duty Ron is having Midwest Equus. He's having a fundraiser starting at noon, I think from noon to 4. So if you guys can join Duty Ron, if you can, Equus Search is a great organization that finds lost kids, and we've worked with them before. In fact, myself and Duty Ron, I think even Phil, were honorary law enforcement liaisons with Midwest Equus. Midwest Equus. I said Equus.
Midwest Texas Equus Search. It's kind of a tongue twister.
Which stands for that search. And Equus, obviously a horse. So, folks, thank you so much, for listening to us today. And seeing a lot of people in the chat I haven't seen in a while. Thank you for coming back. Thank you guys for joining our YouTube channel, our Patreon channel, and just supporting Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories in general. Guys, have a great day.
Stay safe, everybody, and look for Coppers in the Kitchen coming soon.
Very soon.
One episode just ain't enough.